listening to Heroes Initiative.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Heroes Initiative podcast. This is season 2, and I am here with my lovely guest Christine Webster, who is going to tell us a lot about her summer Send Me Now mission trip to Uganda. So stay tuned and hear for some more awesome experiences that she was able to have in that country. How are you doing today?
I'm doing swell. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's been a long, busy week here at Georgia Tech, but I'm so happy to be here back on this podcast again. So just tell me more about what was the location that you went to?
Yeah, so I was in Uganda, and specifically I was in a city called Arua, which is like the northeast part of Uganda, and we were there in the city for most of our time there, but we also did travel to the refugee camps that were about like an hour or so out from the city.
Awesome. Were those times that you were traveling away to the refugee camps, was that a long distance away? Did you have to spend a lot of hours in the car ride, or were those like pretty close villages to where you were at?
They were about like an hour or more away, so
Oh,
they were
wow.
a little bit further away, but the rides were always like super bumpy. Like I would always like hit my head on the roof, but I would also like kind of take naps. And like all my teammates would get mad at me because I was taking a nap even though it was like really bumpy. They're like, how are you taking a nap? And I'm like, I don't know, I just can fall asleep anywhere. And it was like funny. It was like, yeah. But no, it was fun.
Awesome. So what were some of the overall highlights of your trip?
I think something that really just stuck out to me on the trip was just how close the team was while we were there. It was really strange because we got like weirdly close right off the bat. Because so I went through the organization called Nehemiah Teams, which is a branch of the IMB. And so we first all met up in Alabama where we went through some training. And so there we got really to talk a lot and just learn more about the environment we would be in Uganda. And so I think that was definitely a highlight, just getting really close with my team. We're having a reunion in less than a month, and so I'm really looking forward to that. But that's definitely a highlight. And then just also like, and we can get into this more later, but just being able to see like how God worked through the trip within that, short period of just 2 months. It was really awesome.
That's amazing. That's really good to hear. So tell me a little more about how you initially chose the trip or got selected for the trip that you were able to go on, and what that process of getting ready to go to Africa was like.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'm going to be completely honest. So I applied, through Send Me Now, which I'm sure you've mentioned within the previous podcasts. But yeah, I'm going to be completely honest. I was not expecting to go to Uganda whatsoever. So basically through Send Me Now, we get to rank which trips we want to go on. And ultimately, we don't decide which trips we go on, but rather like BCM leaders decide for us, and they place us in certain areas. But they do take into consideration like our rankings and where we want to go. So I know like for the first place I ranked was Japan. Then after that was like California. And then after that was just maybe like some place in Europe. And then that was it. Like I didn't even put Uganda on my list, and I only had like 3 options. And then I remember like giving my leader the rank, and he was like, are you sure this is all you want to put? And I'm like, okay, I'll add a couple other ones on, I guess. And Uganda was one of them. And so I was like, okay, that's whatever. And I was also expecting not to go to Uganda because usually they send out like older upperclassmen to, international areas. I was expecting somewhere in the U.S., but obviously that was not the case. And so when I heard, and, Eric, our campus minister, just like called me up, he was like, Uganda. I remember being like, oh, like what? So that's kind of just how it all happened. Again, I was just not expecting it whatsoever. That's not to say I didn't necessarily want it, but again, like our God is, a God who often surprises us. So that's just, yeah. And of course, I'm so overwhelmingly blessed to have been sent there, and it was all in, God's sovereignty and planning.
What was the experience of having to tell your parents, hey, I'm going to this place, a place that you probably did not expect? Neither did I. What was that like?
So I think after I told my mom, she began like researching all of like the potential like diseases you can get from Uganda, and then like reading them off to me, and then also like the crime rates and stuff. So that was encouraging, but eventually she like came around and she's like, yeah, I think like she understood. She I'm blessed to have like both Christian parents who love God, so she came around. My dad was just sort of like, cool, yeah, that's fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So moving on to after Discovery Weekend happened, and then after further planning and just organizing with campus minister as well as with the team who you met, how was it like to get to meet your team before eventually flying out of the country?
Yeah, it was awesome. So initially when we got there, I still remember exactly the moment like I met each and every one of them. Like I still remember, getting to meet everyone. The first person I met on my team, her name is Hannah, and I met her through the Send Me Now Discovery Weekend because she was the only other girl who was going to Uganda via Send Me Now, and she's actually the BCM president up at UNG. So I was able to meet her first, and we actually met at the Discovery Weekend, but then later I met the rest of my team, which consisted of 4 girls including me, and then 2 guys. So it was me, Hannah, a girl named Brooklyn, who is 23, she's a nail technician, and then another girl, 23 as well, named Karis, who works with mentally ill individuals, and then a guy named Ethan, who is a civil engineer in North Carolina, and then finally our team leader was named Jaden, and he is 25, I believe, and he goes to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. So it was really cool just meeting all of them, and I was the youngest on the team, which I think, like, I don't know, maybe scared me a little bit, but also, like, it was kind of strange. Like, I would oftentimes forget how much older they all are, because most of them were, like 4 or 5 years older than me, which could be a little intimidating, but honestly, like, we all just got so close. I got to know them super well. We just learned so much about each other, maybe a little too much about each other, but it was honestly a very rewarding experience.
What was your favorite thing to eat while you were in Uganda?
That's a good one. So I actually have a lot of like different food experiences that I just kind of remember out of the blue. There's this one time I went into like so we stayed at when we weren't at the refugee camps, when we were in the city of Arua, we stayed at a coffee shop, a very westernized, kind of swanky, like bougie, not like bougie, but it was like pretty nice, Western coffee house. And so we had the people who worked at the coffee house were also our cooks. And so we would also we got super close with them. We loved them so much. We would also just pop in the kitchen and like help cook and help make stuff for the coffee shop. And it was just really fun. But there's this one time where I walked in and there's like a bunch of like chickens around, like live chickens just like running around. And I'm like, I like pick one up. I'm like, oh, he's so cute, And I'm like, I forgot what I named him, but like I named him. I like showed him to the rest of my teammates, and they're like, where the heck did you get this chicken from? And so like I'm like carrying around this chicken, and then I also like asked the cook like where this chicken come from, and she's like, oh, we just bought him. And I'm like, what's it for? And she's like, or like who's it for? And she's like, it's yours. And I'm like, what? And she's like, for dinner. And I'm like, no. And so I had to watch them also slay my pet chicken. and so honestly, he was good. He tasted good. He actually made chicken fried rice out of him, which kind of shocked me too. And this is also, so I'm like half Asian, right? And so
no way.
No way. And I remember the cook, she was like, so she like slayed the chicken. She was making the fried rice, and she looked at me. She's like, you look as if you were like from the Asians. I'm like, what? And she's like, how would you make fried rice? And I'm like, I've never made fried rice in my life. But I'm like, soy sauce, oyster sauce, probably butter, rice, And she's like, okay, that's like, and she is like, she's like, we can't really do that here. And I'm like, why not? And it's because they don't have a lot of like the soy sauce or the oyster sauce or the stuff you use to make like chicken fried rice there in Uganda, and especially in that city. But I remember like afterwards, it tasted extraordinarily good. Like, I don't know how they did it without soy sauce, but it was so good. So that was just one of the more memorable experiences. I've eaten some weird things when I was there. We had like African termites, like they cooked them up for us. Ethan on our team, he bought like a bag of them from the market because apparently they're like a delicacy there. And so he's like eating them, like popping them in one at a time. Like, that's so disgusting, and they're raw. And he's like, oh, they like pop whenever I bite into them. And we're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then like one of our cooks saw him eating it, and she's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to cook them. And we're all like, oh, Ethan. So we cooked them up, and once they like cooked it up, I tried some, and like again, like for the psychological purposes of it, I don't know if I'd ever eat one again, just like knowing it's a bug. But low-key, they were pretty good. Like, like I never would have found myself before this trip, like eating bugs. Like, I never would have pictured myself eating bugs, but they were pretty good. I have to be honest. So we did eat more tame things. We got a lot of mangoes. We would like chew on sugar cane. It was fun. Also, like the prices for food were phenomenal. I bought like over a dozen mangoes for like 50 cents at the market, and like a singular mango here is like $1.50 or something. I don't really know, but it was very, very unique, super cool experience.
You mentioned that you would help the people who you were staying with in the coffee shop, in the kitchen or out front. What were some of the other occupations or jobs that you had while you were there?
Yeah, so well, working there in the coffee shop, it wasn't really like a job. It was just something that we did whenever we had free time, when we were doing fun stuff. In terms of like the work that we did there, I'm not entirely sure if this is what you're getting at, but we so we did work in Arua. We helped make like soaps there, and then all the money, like, so we made it, and we helped refugees make soaps, and then all the money that they sold, it would go back to the refugees. And then we also did work at a girls' home, which consisted of girls who had been abused or neglected, which was an awesome experience, and probably one of definitely my favorite ones there. We got super close with them. We would do things from like, painting their nails and actually they would do our hair, which I was like kind of uncomfortable with, but it's like, you gotta do it. And they would like give me like box braids, and I'm like, oh, please, no. Like, no. But like, they want to, so like you let them, and then like when they like, you thank them, and then when you get back to like away from them, you like take them all out, and you're like, yeah, and it's like a pain on your head. But we would do stuff like that, like play with their hair and do nails, but then we also would like cook with them or bake with them, and there they only had like a fire basically, so we didn't bake, but we made no-bake cookies there, which was really good. And then we just like had tea with them. We did fun stuff like that, and we got super close with them. And it was also just cool hearing their stories, because a lot of them, like, they face trauma and stuff that I guess, like, it's not that we don't get it here in America, but it's definitely not as common. So, like, for instance, there's this one girl I met, and basically her mother sacrificed her sister to an idol and was planning to do the same to her, but thankfully she was able to get away. So it's things like that where it's like, very uncommon here, and hopefully doesn't happen here very often, but it's also like you don't really hear much about it if it does happen here, but there it's a little bit more common. And then at the girls' home too, there was a lot of like sexual assault and just like abuse in general, so it was also like definitely hard sometimes working with them and even relating to them, but it was just so cool getting to like tell them Bible stories, because that's something that even though we can't necessarily relate to their issues, that like the Bible is just something that anyone can relate to, you know, and just sharing them just the love with Jesus. And then in that was this ministry, the girls' homes ministry, and then the making soaps, that was all in Arua. Then at the refugee camps, we would do various things. We would do just like, you know, typical evangelism. And then we helped clean up a school, which was really cool. And then also like get a minister to the teachers there, which was super cool. And I also, since they're teachers too, I took advantage of that, and they taught me some of their language, which was awesome. And then also at the refugee camps, we worked at a clinic for pregnant mothers. And we even like took a little class on how to like, you know, poke their blood and get their hemoglobin or get their blood pressure and like heart rate, all that stuff, just to make sure their vitals look good. And then if not, then like we would, you know, get them help and get whatever they needed. We would also provide them with, we call them like mama kits, and they're just like kits filled with, you know, like sterile equipment and stuff to help them have a clean and safe, healthy birth.
Thanks for listening to Heroes Initiative.